Hello, today I'm going to be reading How to Train Your Dragon Book 1 by Governor Santa Claus. Yesterday we read this one, chapter 1, and today we're going to be reading Inside the Dragon Nursery, chapter 2. Okay, chapter 2, Inside the Dragon Nursery. You have probably guessed by now that Hiccup was not your natural Viking hero. For a start, he didn't look like a hero. Somebody like Snortlout, for instance, is tall and muscly, covered in skeleton tattoos, and already had beginnings of a small mustache. This consisted the few straggly yellow hairs clinging to his upper lip and was deeply unpleasant to look at, but still impressively manly for a boy not yet 13. Hiccup was on the small side and had a kind of face that was almost entirely unmemorable. He did have heretic hair, which was very bright red and stood up vertically. However, how much you tried to wet it down on the seawater. But nobody ever saw that because it was hidden under his helmet most of the time. You'd never have picked Hiccup out of those 10 boys to be a hero of the story. Snortlout was good at everything and the natural leader. Dog's Breath was as tall as his father. He could do amusing things like farting at a tune of the Berg National Anthem. Hiccup was just absolutely hilarious, the kind of unmarkable, skinny, freckled boy who is usually who was easy to overlook in a crowd. So when Gober blew the horn and moved out of sight to comfortable rock to sit on and eat his mussel and tomato sandwich, Snortlout pushed Hiccup out of the way and took charge. Okay, listen up, boys, he whispered in a menacing fashion. I'm in charge, not the useless. And anybody who objects the knuckle sandwich from anybody who objects gets a knuckle sandwich from Dog's Breath of their brain. Grunted Dog's Breath, pounding his fists together in happy excitement. Dog's Breath was Snortlout's chief sidekick and a great big gorilla of a boy. Bash him, Dog's Breath. So, to show what I mean, Dog's Breath was delighted to oblige. He gave Hiccup a shove that sent him sprawling headfirst into the snow and then ground his face on it. Pay attention, hissed Snortlout. The boys dragged their eyes away from the Dog's Breath and Hiccup and paid attention. Rope yourselves together. The best climber should go first. Well, that's you, of course, Snortlout, said Fishlegs. You're the best at everything, aren't you? Snortlout looked at Fishlegs suspiciously. It was difficult to tell whether Fishlegs was laughing at him or not because he was a squint. That's right, Fishlegs, said Snortlout. I am. And just in case he had been laughing at him, bash him, Dog's Breath. Well, Dog's Breath pushed Fishlegs to join Hiccup in the snow. Everybody started roping themselves together. Hiccup and Fishlegs were the last to be tied on just behind the flushed and triumphant Dog's Breath. Oh, brilliant, muttered Fishlegs. I'm about to enter a cave full of man-eating reptiles tied up to 8 complete maniacs. Well, if we get to the cave, said Hiccup nervously, looking up at the sheer black cliff. Hiccup put a lighted torch between his teeth and to leave the hands free and started climbing after the others. It was perilous climb. The rocks were slippery with snow and the other boys were thoroughly overexcited, making the ascent far too quickly. At one point, Clueless missed his footing and fell luckily into Doc's breast, who caught him by the back of the torus and heaved him back into the rock again before he brought the whole lot of them down. When they finally made it to the mouth of the cave, Hiccup looked down breathlessly at the sea pounding the rocks way below and swallowed very hard. "Untie the ropes!" orders not loud, his eyes popping with excitement at the thought of the dangers to come. "Hiccup gets to go in the cave first because he is the son of the chief," he sneered. "And if any dragons are away, he'll be the first one to know about it. Once we're in the cave, it's every man for himself. Only the strong can belong." Although he wasn't your usual mindless thug of hooligan, Hiccup wasn't a wimp either. Being frightened is not same as being coward. Maybe he was as brave as anyone else there, because he went to catch the dragon despite knowing what dragons look like. And when he had climbed precisely to the mouth of the cave and had found that inside there was a long twisty tunnel, he still went down it, despite not being too keen on the long, twisty tunnels with dragons at the end of them. The tunnel was dripping and clammy. At times it was high enough for the boys to walk upright. Then it would close down the narrow, claustrophobic holes that the boys could only squeeze through. Squirming on their stomachs, the flayers held on in their mouths. After 10 long minutes of walking and crawling into the heart of the cliff, the stench of dragon, a salty stink of seaweed and old mackerel heads, got stronger and stronger until finally it became unbearable and the tunnel opened out into an enormous cavern. The cavern was full of more dragons than Hiccup could ever imagine existed. They were possibly every color and size, and they included the species that Hiccup had heard of and quite a few more he hadn't. Hiccup started sweating as he looked around him at a pile after pile of the animals draped overly every available surface. He was even hanging upside down from the roof like gigantic bats. They were all fast asleep, and most of them were snoring in unison. This was a sound so loud that and so deep that it seemed to penetrate right into Hiccup's body and vibrate it around and soft insides, touching his stomach and bones and forcing his heart to beat at the same slow dragon pulse. If one of these countless creatures were to wake up, it will raise the alarm to the others, and the boys would meet a horrible death. Hiccup had once seen a deer that had wandered too close to a wild dragon cliff and torn into pieces in a matter of minutes. Hiccup closed his eyes. I will not think about it, he said to himself. I will not. None of the other boys were thinking about it. Ignorance was very useful to such circumstances. Their eyes were popping with excitement as they walked through the cave, hands over their noses to keep out the revolting smell, looking for the biggest dragon they could find that would fit in their basket. They left the torches in the pile of the entrance. The cavern was already well lit by the glowworms, huge sluggish animals dotted here and there that shone on a steady yet dim fluorescence like a low, wet light bulb. The flame of earth gave of extra light little birds of light that flickered on and off as they breathed in and out. Predictably, most of the boys headed toward the plug uglies of the dragon world. Snortlout made a big fuss about grabbing a vicious-looking monstrous nightmare, smiling nastily at Hiccup as he did so. Snortlout was the son of Beggy Bum the Beer Belly, Stoic the vast younger brother. He was intending to get rid of Hiccup sometime in the future so that Snortlout, will be chief of the Hairy Hooligan tribe, and was a gruesome and terrifying chief as Snortlout meant to be, would need a probably awesome dragon. Wolfie Hog and Dog's Breath got into a loudly whispered fight over a grunkle, a heavy armored brute with fangs like kitchen knives sticking out in such numbers you couldn't keep its mouth shut. Dog's Breath won. Then he managed to drop it as he was trying to bundle it into the basket. The weaponry of the beast made a horrible loud clatter, and as it landed in the floor of the cavern, the grunkle opened its evil crocodile eyes. Everybody held their breath. The grunkle stared ahead. It is difficult to tell from its blank expression whether it was awake or fast asleep. Hiccup realized in an agony of suspense that the gossamer thin third eyelid was still down, and there it stayed for a few heart-stopping moments until it slowly closed its upper eyelids again. Amazingly, not one of the dragons woke up. A few grumbled groggily before making them comfy again, but most were such in a stupor that they barely even stirred. Hiccup let out his breath. Maybe these dragons were so dead to the world that nothing would awake them from their slumber. Viking dragons and their eggs. 2. The Grunkle. The Grunkle is the plug ugly of the dragon world, but what it lacks in looks, it makes up for on the battlefield. They can be slow and nearsighted, stupid, and sometimes they get so fat they are unable to take off. They are also prone of the dragonets. Colors not green, buggy, Pidgey, Pooey Brown, armed with all the best in dragon weaponry. Fangs like daggers, extra spike on neck, bow with spikes on the end of the tail. Score 8. Defenses: super thick, flame proof, and scratch proof skin. Score 9. Radar, none. Poison, radar, none. Score 0. Poison, none. Score 0. Hunting ability: Grunkles are slow to maneuver in the air. Score 0. Speed, see above. Score 5. Fear and fight factor: terrifying in action. Score 9. Total score 31. He swallowed hard, muttered a prayer to Loki and the patron saint of the sneaky expo, and edged forward cautiously to grab the most unconscious looking dragon so he could get out of this nightmare as fast as possible. It is a little known fact that dragons grow colder the deeper they sleep. It's even possible for dragons to go into a sleep coma, which they are icy cold with no obvious pulse or breath or heartbeat. They can stay in this state for centuries, and only a highly skilled expert can tell from looking at them if they are alive or dead. But a dragon who is awake or lightly sleeping is very warm indeed, like bread that has just come out of the oven. Hiccup found one about the right size and fairly cool to the touch and maneuvered it into the basket as quickly and carefully as he could. It was a very basic brown, but at that moment Hiccup could not care less. Even though it was barely half grown, it was surprisingly heavy. I did it! I did it! I did it! He chanted happily to himself. At least he wasn't going to be the only boy in the class who didn't have a dragon. Everybody seemed to have gotten dragon. Everybody seemed to have gotten themselves one by now, and they were making their way quietly toward the exit. Everybody there was, except for Fish Legs, who was already covered in a bright red, itchy red rash, and what big red itchy rash and was at that very moment approaching a pile of gnarly untangled natters and loud tiptoes. Fish Legs was even worse than a burglary than dog's breath. Hiccup stopped dead in his tracks. "Don't do it, Fish Legs, please don't do it," he whispered. But Fish Legs were fed up and snort louts, taunting and being sneered and jeered at. He was going to get himself a really cool dragon that all the other boys would respect. Squinting so hard he could barely see the pile of the dragons, his eyes steaming and scratching himself violently, Fish Legs reached slowly toward the bottom of the most dragon, took one leg in his hand and gently yanked. The entire pile came crashing down in a furious tangle of limbs and wings and ears. Every boy in the cavern had a horrified gasp. Most of the natters snapped crossly at each other before settling back down to sleep. The brute, bigger one than the others, opened his eyes and blinked a few times. Hiccup noted with a great relief that the third eyelid was still down. The boys waited for the eyes to close. And then Fish Legs sneezed. 4 gigantic sneezes that went echoing and bouncing off the cavern walls. The big natter started sightlessly overhead, frozen like a dragon statue, but very faintly. The ominous purring noise began in its snort, and very slowly the third eyelid slid upward. "Uh-oh," whispered Hiccup. The Natter's head suddenly whipped round to face Fish Legs, its yellow cat eyes snapping into focus on the boy. It unfolded its wings to their greatest extent and stealthily avenged, like a panther about to spring. It opened its mouth wide enough to show the forked dragon tongue and... "Run!" shouted Hiccup, grabbing Fish Legs' arm and dragging him away. The boys ran to the exit tunnel. Fish Legs and Hiccup was the last to go there. There was no time to pick up the torches, so they went running in the pitch dark. The basket with the basic brown dragon was pumping in Hiccup's back. He had 2 minutes start on the dragons because it took a while for the first dragon to wake and everybody else up. But Hiccup could hear furious roaring and flapping as the dragon started to pour into the tunnel after the boys. He ran a little faster. The dragons could move faster than the boys because they could see better in the dark, but they were held up when the tunnel got smaller and they had to fold their wings and squirm into. "I haven't got a dragon!" panted Fish Legs, a couple of paces behind Hiccup. "That," said Hiccup as he scrambled frantically on his elbows and tried to narrow it, "that is the least of our problems. They're gaining on us." "No, dragon!" repeated Fish Legs stubbornly. "Oh, for soul's sake!" snapped Hiccup. He thrust the bag into Fish Legs' arm and grabbed the empty one from Fish Legs' back. "Have mine then, wait here." And Hiccup turned back and went back through the narrow bit and the roaring was getting louder and closer by the second. "What are you doing?" screamed Fish Legs, frantically dancing up and down on the spot. Hiccup came back to the hole again precious moments later. Fish Legs grabbed hold of an arm and helped hold him through. They could hear horrible snuffling and sounded as if the nose of a dragon had entered the other end of a hole. Hiccup bunched the rock and it squealed it identically. They turned a corner and suddenly they could see light from outside in the end of the funnel tunnel. Fish Legs went at first, but just as Hiccup was kneeling down the hollow, a dragon pounced him with a flap and a shriek. Hiccup hit it and fell back enough for him to crawl toward the light. Another dragon, or maybe it was the same one, sank its fangs into Hiccup's scalp. He was so desperate to get out, he dragged the animal through with him. As soon as Hiccup head and shoulders were thrown out into the light, there was Goober. He grabbed Hiccup under the armpits and hauled him out, dragons pouring after him. "Jump!" yelled Goober as he stunned the dragon with his with one blow of his mighty fist. What do you mean, jump? Hiccup hesitated as he looked down in the dizzying drop to the sea. No time to climb down, panted Gulliver, banging a couple of dragons' heads together and bouncing 3 more in his gigantic belly. Jump! Hiccup closed his eyes and leaped off the cliff. As he plunged to the air, the dragons that were attached to his leg released its jaws and with a squawk of alarm and flew off. Oh, yeah. Hiccup was traveling at such speed by the time he hit the water, and it didn't feel like water at all. More like something hard and painful, so cold that he nearly passed out. He spluttered to the surface, amazed to find that he didn't appear to be dead, and was immediately drenched by the gigantic splash of Gulliver the Belch, landing a couple of feet away from him. Shrieking furiously, the dragon swarmed out of the cave and dive-bombed the floating Vikings. Hiccup pulled the helmet as far down as it would go. There were horrible scraping sounds and as dragon's tense talons racked across the metal. Another one landed, hissing on the water right in front of Hiccup's face. It took off again with a screech when it felt how cold the sea was. The dragons didn't like flying through the snow, and with relief, Hiccup watched as they flew back, screaming terrible dragon insults in Dragonese from the warmth of the cave entrance. Gulliver started to pull the boys out of the sea and onto the rocks. Viking boys are strong swimmers, but it is difficult to keep afloat when you have a basket full of trapped, terrified dragons on your back. Hiccup was the last to be saved. Hiccup was last to be saved just in time as the cold was beginning to put him to sleep. Well, at least I wasn't deaf, thought Hiccup as Gulliver grabbed him by the neck to rescue him, nearly drowning in the process. But it certainly wasn't glory either. Okay, that's the end of our story for today. If you liked it, please like and subscribe. Next time I will read this chapter 3, Heroes for Exiles. Yeah. So I'll see you next time, and stay well. Bye.